The movie opens as we are shown that a deadly virus has wiped out every human being, and Philip Miller is the last man on Earth. He has been living alone for the past year, driving around America in search of other survivors. He travels to every single state, making announcements to empty cities while stealing artifacts and paintings from museums. After failing to find anyone, Philip decides to return to his hometown of Tucson. Still making one last attempt to find someone, he writes, "Alive in Tucson" on every billboard he can find. Once he arrives in Tucson, he goes to his shabby apartment and packs all the necessary supplies before making his way to a gated community in the more luxurious part of the city. There, he chooses the biggest house and declares it his new home. He spends the next few days decorating the house with all the famous paintings he stole from the White House, a dinosaur skull, Academy Awards, and many other artifacts worth billions of dollars. Every night before going to sleep, Philip makes sure to apologize to God for masturbating so much, and he wishes that he could at least see the face of one woman before his death. Thankfully, there are still plenty of cars he can use to drive around the city. He goes to the grocery store in his underwear and breaks in using a gun. In just 1 year, he has completely forgotten basic decency. Now that there is no one left to impress, he does everything that used to be just an impulsive thought before the virus, like destroying piles of cans in the store and bringing hundreds of adult films home to pass the time. He plays racquetball by himself, uses lamps and aquariums as bowling pins, and crashes cars into each other. The chaos gives him a rush of adrenaline and helps him cope with the loneliness. After about a month, he starts to lose his sense of sanity. Moreover, spending his birthday alone reminds him of everything he failed to appreciate when life was normal. He misses his mother, his old life, and humanity in general. The scene cuts to a few months later. The grand mansion where Philip lives has turned into a dumping site. It is filled with plastic and cans that he never cleans up because he feels there is no point in doing so. He hasn't showered in days and has started living like an animal. The house no longer has running water, and the toilet is covered with plastic bottles. So instead, Philip cuts a hole in the diving board and uses the swimming pool as his toilet. He also fills a kiddie pool with margaritas and bathes in it while simultaneously drinking from it. Then one day, he goes to a bar and draws faces on several balls, giving them names and personalities. He talks to them as if they are his real friends, just to make himself feel less lonely. That night, he brings one of the balls, named Gary, to a clothing store and flirts with a mannequin he has a crush on. When her arm accidentally breaks, Philip loses his mind. He decides that he doesn't want to live anymore and goes to a nearby hill to do the unthinkable. He says goodbye to all of his ball friends, promising to remember them forever. Then, he gets into his car and drives toward the hill at full speed. Suddenly, he notices smoke rising in the distance and stops the car just seconds before it crashes. Philip can hardly believe his eyes. He immediately follows the smoke and arrives at a trailer that is clearly inhabited by someone. Then, he notices something he has been longing to see for the past year. Someone has left a bra out to dry in the sun. Philip picks it up, smells it, and is so overwhelmed that he faints. When he wakes up, he finds a beautiful girl holding him in her lap. She seductively promises to fulfill all of his wishes and kisses him. Philip happily enjoys the kiss before suddenly waking up and realizing it was only a dream. The woman standing in front of him is older and less attractive. She is performing CPR to bring him back. They quickly pull away from each other, both feeling awkward. After seeing another human being for the first time in so long, Philip asks where the beautiful woman has gone. Instead, she points out that he should be more concerned about his wet underwear. It turns out that he peed himself while he was unconscious. Even in a situation like this, Philip insists that his underwear is wet because he had been sweating from the front earlier, not because he peed himself. He aggressively tries to explain himself, making the woman panic. She pulls out a gun and tells him to stay away. Philip finally admits that he did, in fact, pee himself. After they both calm down, he is left feeling embarrassed. They introduce themselves. The girl's name is Carol. She used to be an analyst before the virus and has been wandering around America ever since everyone died. She saw the "Alive in Tucson" sign and came here to see if she really was the last person alive. Although Philip had been dying to meet a woman, he isn't very excited to see Carol. She repeatedly corrects his grammar, doesn't understand his jokes, and keeps talking about things he finds irrelevant. After talking for a while, they decide to drive to the grocery store. On the way, Carol complains about him running a stop sign, despite Philip arguing that there is no traffic. She remains adamant that they have to follow the rules, or else they will start living like animals. To make her feel better, he stops at a stop sign and looks both ways, confirming that no one is crossing the road. Her nagging doesn't stop when they reach the grocery store, and Philip parks in a handicapped space. They get into their fifth argument of the day, with Philip insisting that her imaginary handicapped person has plenty of space to park somewhere else. When Carol continues urging him to move the car, he drives the vehicle straight into the store. Afterward, Carol takes a tour of his house and is disgusted by the way he lives. He has 2 swimming pools, one filled with feces and the other with garbage. Carol also accuses him of stealing the paintings, even though he argues that they don't belong to anyone anymore. By the end of the house tour, Philip asks her to go back to her campsite. The next morning, he wakes up to find Carol cleaning his house. She nags him to get gardening and cleaning supplies from the store because they have to start living like human beings again. That night, Philip goes to visit his ball buddies and complains about Carol. Even though he has only known her for a day, he feels like they are a married couple who desperately need to get a divorce. The following morning, things get even worse for him when Carol moves into the house next door. He tries to shoo her away, but Carol, being Carol, is stubborn. She asks him if he is scared of being seen naked, and in response, Philip takes off his pants. Carol finally addresses the elephant in the room and brings up the topic of reproduction. She believes that they are the chosen ones who have been given the responsibility of repopulating the earth. Philip says he wouldn't sleep with her even if she were the last woman on earth. In the next scene, he is using his outdoor toilet when Carol approaches him. She wants him to find a way to restore running water to their houses. That way, they can grow tomatoes and other fruits. When he refuses to help, she tries to bribe him with fresh tomatoes. But he doesn't care. She should know better than to try bribing a guy who poops off a diving board. However, when it gets dark, he sneaks into her garden and eats all of her vegetables. The next morning, Carol knocks on his door and finds him covered in leftover tomatoes. Philip still insists that he isn't the one who stole them. He also notices that Carol has injured her leg while trying to transfer water to her house from a manhole. A few days later, she gives up on trying to live like a decent human being. Philip finds her building an outdoor toilet in a fountain, copying his swimming pool toilet. Carol thinks that they might not be the chosen ones, but rather the forgotten ones who have no purpose in life. They are in no way capable of creating an entire human civilization when they can't even arrange a proper toilet in their million-dollar mansions. Philip, who is used to seeing Carol as an optimistic person, feels sorry for her. So, he goes to the city's water tank and finds a way to supply water to Carol's garden. She is finally happy to see a good side of him and invites him over for dinner that night. Philip enjoys an organic meal for the first time in a long while. After dinner, the topic of sex comes up, and Philip says that he is now ready to sleep with her. However, to his surprise, Carol doesn't want to make love before marriage. At first, Philip laughs, thinking that she is joking, but she turns out to be completely serious, even though the idea seems ridiculous. To make her feel better, he proposes to her. Eventually, they decide to get married. The next day, they are in a church saying their wedding vows. Philip doesn't think any of it is necessary, but he goes along with it anyway. When they step out of the church, they are greeted by a crowd of guests. Philip realizes he has made a terrible mistake and screams. Then, he suddenly wakes up in his bed, relieved to realize that it was only a dream. He even checks out the window to make sure that most of the world is still dead. A while later, Carol comes to Philip's house with some food. She believes that the President of the United States should be elected through voting, but Philip thinks the whole process is useless. Instead, he elects himself and becomes president unanimously. The two then enjoy spaghetti and raisin balls, which Carol considers a good alternative to meatballs. Soon, the day of their wedding finally arrives. Carol prepares the decorations and cake, while Philip is supposed to get the wedding rings. However, instead of getting the rings, Philip throws a bachelorette party with his ball buddies, setting fire to random things in a parking lot. He even says goodbye to the mannequin, telling her that she will always remain the love of his life. At the end of the day, Philip finally goes to the church, where Carol has prepared a recording to officiate their wedding. After exchanging their brief vows, it is finally time to exchange rings. But this is when Carol discovers that Philip never bought them. She realizes that she is the only one putting any real effort into their relationship, so she calls off the wedding. Later, Philip knocks on Carol's door, hoping to talk to her, but she refuses to answer. Frustrated, he grabs a hammer, breaks down the front door, and enters the house. To his surprise, Carol has actually put a lot of effort into decorating the place. She has even prepared a cake for them with a statue of Philip on top. Seeing everything she has done, Philip feels terrible about his behavior and apologizes. He admits that he doesn't really like her personality or even the food she cooks. But despite all of that, he is grateful that she exists because, without her, he wouldn't be alive right now. With that, Philip takes Carol out to do something special. In the next scene, they visit a jewelry shop where Carol gets all the rings she wants. They finally complete their wedding ceremony and are officially declared husband and wife. That night, they sleep together, but the experience isn't anything like Philip expected. Carol keeps talking throughout the night, making strange comments that she believes are romantic. The next morning, Carol finds Philip playing racquetball inside his home. Philip expects her to start nagging him again, but to his surprise, she joins him in the game. From that point on, Carol begins enjoying the strange lifestyle Philip is used to. They spend the rest of the day doing things Philip normally enjoys. They make fireproof suits and set each other on fire, run a bulldozer over beer cans, and even go to meet Philip's ex-girlfriend, who happens to be a mannequin. Carol talks to the mannequin for a while before eventually beating her up for hitting on her husband. Philip is actually happy that he married Carol. As they drive back home, he starts to believe that their unusual life together might actually be tolerable. But suddenly, they hit a limousine at an intersection. Shocked, Philip gets out of the car and rushes toward the limo. A beautiful woman then steps out. And just when Philip thought he had finally become happy with his wife, seeing this woman makes him start to regret their marriage. And that's how Philip's strange new marriage takes an unexpected turn. What started as a lonely and unusual relationship has now become a completely different kind of problem. But will Philip really throw away his marriage for this beautiful woman? Or will he finally realize what Carol means to him? If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the video. Let me know in the comments what you think Philip should do next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.